He clearly finds these photo opportunities very exciting. I mean, it's an incredible thing to witness, and I think grandchildren are just adored.
At a dazzling royal gala filled with elegance, tradition, and the watchful eyes of the world, no one expected the evening's most unforgettable moment to come from young Princess Charlotte. Yet, with quiet confidence, she stepped forward, took the microphone, and delivered a speech that left the entire room stunned. Her words were bold, heartfelt, and far beyond her years, leaving Queen Camilla visibly speechless and the audience in awe. What inspired Charlotte's sudden act of bravery? This is the remarkable story of the young princess who stole the spotlight that night, when silence stole the royal spotlight. Every year, the Royal Gala brought together the glittering heart of Britain's high society. Dignitaries, philanthropists, celebrities, all stepping into the grandeur of a palace ballroom draped in gold, the air alive with the hum of strings from the royal orchestra. But this evening was different. It wasn't the guest list or the dazzling gowns that set it apart. It was something unplanned, unscripted, and quietly electrifying. The long banquet tables glowed under chandeliers, crystal glasses reflecting candlelight, while royal banners swayed gently near the tall windows. At the head table, King Charles and Queen Camilla maintained their practiced composure. Prince William and Princess Catherine entered with polished grace, their children following quietly, as if aware of the weight of eyes upon them. Princess Charlotte, in a soft powder blue gown that caught the light like early frost, seemed unusually still, watching more than participating, as though she sensed her moment was yet to come. The evening moved in expected rhythm, toasts, speeches, applause. Yet beneath the polished formality, a certain tension brewed, the kind that made glances linger a second too long. Then, without warning, the Master of Ceremonies stepped forward with an addition not printed in the program, a short address from Her Royal Highness, Princess Charlotte of Wales. The ripple was immediate. Queen Camilla's brows arched. King Charles leaned forward slightly, and Catherine gave her daughter a subtle but steadying touch on the back. William's expression mixed pride with the guarded awareness of a man who knew the world's eyes were about to weigh every syllable his daughter spoke. Charlotte rose slowly, her chair sliding back with a quiet scrape against marble. She walked toward the podium with a poise far beyond her years, her steps echoing faintly in the hushed hall. When she reached the microphone, she didn't speak right away. Instead, she looked across the sea of faces, nobility and commoners alike, with a calm that made the silence feel almost ceremonial. And in that stillness, something shifted. The gala was no longer a carefully orchestrated pageant. It had become a moment of raw anticipation. What would this young princess say? Would her words be cautious and rehearsed, or would they carry the first bold notes of a future queen's voice? But what if Princess Charlotte's unplanned moment carried the first bold notes of a future queen's voice? Stay glued to your screen. Princess Charlotte's unplanned moment. That stunned the royals. Some moments in royal life don't wait for schedules or scripts. They arrive unannounced, slip past protocol, and settle into history before anyone realizes what's happening. That evening at the Grand London Gala, the kind held under chandeliers older than most nations, the air had been one of polite chatter and rehearsed speeches, until a quiet shift rippled through the room. The young Princess Charlotte, who had not been listed among the night's speakers, was suddenly making her way to the podium. It hadn't been part of the official program, and palace aides later whispered that only hours before she had spoken privately with her parents. Catherine had listened, her gaze steady, while William weighed the risks and rewards. The decision was delicate. Such departures from the plan could invite headlines they might not want. Yet Charlotte's calm insistence had tipped the balance. Without fanfare, her name was added to the evening's running order, discreetly, almost invisibly. When she stood before the audience, an assembly of political leaders, philanthropists, and seasoned journalists, the chatter ceased entirely. Even Queen Camilla leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped so tightly they whitened at the knuckles. King Charles murmured something to an aide, while Prince George's eyes widened, fixed on his sister. Charlotte's presence was striking not for her age, but for the stillness she brought with her. Her fingers rested lightly on the podium's edge, her chin tilted just enough to meet every gaze. There was no trembling, no scripted stiffness, only a sincerity that seemed to gather the entire room in its orbit. She began not with royal formalities, but with a story. It was about kindness, small acts that ripple far beyond what anyone sees. She spoke of children whose struggles are often invisible, of charities quietly mending lives without seeking recognition. Her words came without cue cards or teleprompters, carried instead by memory and conviction. At that moment, her youth seemed irrelevant. She wasn't merely the daughter of a future king. She was the voice of a generation determined to turn privilege into purpose. And as her final sentence lingered in the air, it became clear this wasn't a passing whim. It was the spark of something that might change the royal story forever. But what makes Princess Charlotte's quiet strength behind the crown so captivating? Stay with us and find out. Princess Charlotte, growing grace, behind the crown. Long before cameras captured her poised stance at the gala, Princess Charlotte's story was quietly unfolding within the palace walls. While the world often focused on sparkling tiaras and royal protocol, an entirely different kind of education was taking shape, one that blended responsibility with genuine curiosity. William and Catherine were raising their children not as mere symbols of tradition, but as voices for the people, young figures who could carry empathy and insight alongside their titles. Charlotte's upbringing balanced warmth and discipline, freedom and expectation. She spent afternoons asking more questions than her handlers anticipated, genuinely interested in why people struggled, what inspired hope, and how small actions could make a difference. Visits to hospitals, environmental projects, and meetings with veterans became lessons in understanding life beyond palace gates. She learned that power was not something to flaunt, but a tool to touch lives. Even quiet evenings at home were instructive. She would read aloud, help her younger brother Louis navigate overwhelming events, and explore her thoughts freely. Encouraged by a mother who valued independence, William walked beside her during public appearances, his gentle affirmations weaving confidence into her growing awareness. Moments that never made headlines often shaped her most. A year before the gala, Charlotte knelt beside a child at a hospice, receiving a handmade bracelet and offering a tight hug that spoke volumes without a word. These experiences left impressions deeper than applause ever could. She absorbed lessons about sorrow, loss, and duty, overhearing late-night conversations between her parents about influence, purpose, and compassion. By the time she approached the gala podium, Charlotte was more than a child reciting prepared lines. She was the embodiment of intentional parenting, lived experience, and heartfelt empathy. A young royal whose instinct and preparation converged effortlessly. Every question she asked, every gesture she made, carried the weight of awareness and the promise of meaningful impact. She hadn't been pushed into the spotlight, she had quietly grown into it. And now, as the world watched, it was finally beginning to understand why her presence could command attention without a crown, impress hearts without ceremony, and leave an unforgettable mark on everyone she met. So, what made Princess Charlotte's voice stop the entire room? Stay glued to your screen to uncover this astonishing moment. Princess Charlotte's voice that stopped the room. Some moments arrive quietly, yet leave echoes that no palace walls can contain. On a crisp evening in London, tucked away in a hall that usually hums with polite chatter, Princess Charlotte stepped forward, her small frame belying a presence far greater than her years. Cameras captured a hush falling over the room as she lifted her head and met the audience's gaze, not with nerves, but with unwavering calm. She began simply, almost as if sharing a secret, yet every syllable landed with precision. "Even a small voice can make a difference," she said, and suddenly, the room felt the weight of every untold story, every quiet struggle. No teleprompter, no cards, just a child speaking the truth. Charlotte's voice didn't just carry, it resonated. She spoke of hope in times of shadow, of kindness that costs nothing but means everything, of the simple power of showing up for each other. And then she touched on what no one had expected: subtle references to her family's recent trials, the whispers of her mother, Princess Kate's health, her grandfather, King Charles's treatments, were woven delicately into her message. She never named names, never dramatized, but the room knew. Families everywhere face storms, she reminded them, and even in sadness, we can be the light for someone else. It was raw, honest, and impossible to ignore. By the time Charlotte reached the heart of her speech, something remarkable had happened. Polite applause had melted into awe. Royal aides, charity leaders, even Queen Camilla herself appeared captivated. She encouraged children to help one another, reminded everyone that even the smallest voices can hold the biggest truths, and in doing so, bridged the distance between palace walls and living rooms across the country. Every pause, every glance, every deliberate word seemed crafted by a wisdom far beyond her years. She didn't just deliver lines, she connected hearts, evoking resilience, compassion, and hope in a way adults often struggle to do. When she finally concluded, the audience didn't just clap, they stood, moved in unison by the clarity, sincerity, and quiet power of a child who spoke like a leader. In that room, Princess Charlotte wasn't merely a royal heir. She was a voice for everyone who needed to believe that even the smallest among us can shine the brightest. But what really went through Queen Camilla's mind during Princess Charlotte's gala moment? Stay glued to your screen to find out. Queen Camilla's reaction. Princess Charlotte's gala moment. In the glittering heart of London's grandest ballroom, the gala had begun like any other, with chandeliers casting soft gold over well-dressed guests, polite laughter echoing against ornate walls, and cameras capturing every poised smile. Queen Camilla sat near the center of the royal table, her composure seemingly flawless. She greeted guests, exchanged courteous nods, and offered gentle remarks, her presence a steady anchor in the evening's shimmer. Yet, beneath the practiced poise, a subtle tension lingered, waiting for a spark. That spark arrived the moment Princess Charlotte ascended the stage. The young princess, barely in her early teens, carried herself with a quiet confidence that seemed to bend the room's energy. Camilla's gaze followed every movement, her expression sharpening, lips pressing into a line that suggested careful measurement. Charlotte's words were simple, yet they held an unexpected weight. She spoke of those overlooked, those who feel invisible even in crowded rooms, and of kindness, not as charity, but as justice. Something in that phrasing made the Queen shift imperceptibly in her seat, a tremor of awareness brushing through her composed facade. A subtle hand gesture from an aide went unheeded. Camilla remained fixated, blinking slowly as if bracing against the impact of innocence speaking undeniable truth. Across the table, King Charles cast a brief, concerned glance, but she gave no answer, her hands curling slightly around the edges of her wine glass without lifting it. Every breath, every subtle movement carried the weight of reflection, as if Charlotte's gentle words had punctured the armor of royal routine. When applause filled the hall, Camilla remained seated longer than anyone else, absorbing the moment in silence. Rising finally, her smile returned, but it was quieter now, edged with something unspoken, perhaps contemplation, perhaps reckoning. Later that evening, she departed earlier than anticipated. Observers noted the way she gripped her handbag, avoided reporters' eyes, and offered only a brief nod to Charlotte in passing, leaving an air of unresolved tension. It was more than a night of speeches and glittering gowns. For Camilla, it was a quiet reckoning, a reminder that legacy is measured not by ceremony, but by how one responds when the next generation speaks truths even the most composed cannot ignore. But what makes Princess Charlotte's voice rise beyond the crown, leaving everyone stunned? Stay glued to your screen. A voice beyond the crown. The applause lingered, yet something far quieter, almost electric, settled over the grand hall. Princess Charlotte had stepped to the microphone not as a royal figure, but as a child, unafraid to speak her mind. On that evening in London, she did more than deliver a speech. She cracked open a door that no one expected her to approach so soon. For decades, the monarchy had moved like clockwork, its image polished and rehearsed, its messages tightly controlled. Yet here, A new generation was quietly asserting itself. Charlotte's words were neither scripted nor filtered. They carried a sincerity born of experience. She spoke of hospitals she had visited, children she had comforted, and stories she had quietly witnessed. Moments many adults might overlook. Calm, clear, and tender. Her voice cut through gilded walls heavier than gold, reminding the world that leadership is not about titles or appearances. It is about empathy, courage, and the willingness to engage with hearts, not just headlines. Inside the palace, whispers rippled among staff. Some were moved to tears, others alarmed. Could a royal child be allowed to speak so freely? What precedent might this set? Yet outside the palace doors, the public had already spoken. Clips of Charlotte's address spread across classrooms, social media, and dining tables. Essays were written, quotes shared, discussions ignited. Millions saw in her a reflection of the monarchy they had longed to understand. Not distant figures in crowns, but people who listened, felt, and dared to act with compassion. Some called her the new heart of the monarchy. Others drew comparisons to Diana, not for fashion or flair, but for the quiet bravery to confront truth with empathy. Charlotte's speech was subtle, yet revolutionary. She reminded the world that influence is earned, not inherited, and that authenticity can move more than ceremony ever could. In that moment, the monarchy's image shifted imperceptibly but irrevocably. A young girl was no longer just a symbol of royalty. She had become a living example of honesty, empathy, and purpose. The world had heard her, not because of her title, but because she was real. But what made the public and media react so strongly to this royal moment? Stay glued to your screen. Public and media response. Not all crowns are worn on thrones. Some shine in quiet, unexpected moments, carried not by pomp or ceremony, but by courage and heart. On a crisp evening at Kensington Palace, Princess Charlotte stepped to the podium in a delicate blue gown, her small frame radiating poise far beyond her years. What followed would ripple across screens, phones, and conversations around the globe. In a room full of dignitaries and cameras, she spoke, not for applause, not for headlines, but for those who too often go unheard. By morning, her words had become impossible to ignore. Clips of Charlotte standing tall, speaking with a clarity that startled even seasoned journalists, were everywhere. Headlines hailed a future Queen of Compassion, even though she wasn't first in line for the throne. Something far rarer than royal protocol had emerged. Raw, authentic presence, wrapped in innocence. Across social media, hashtags trended, fan pages buzzed, and video loops replayed her subtle glance toward Queen Camilla, a gesture that sparked endless speculation. Was it planned, a private signal, or pure unscripted courage? Everyone had an opinion, and everyone wanted to talk about it. The impact went far beyond chatter. Teachers shared her speech in classrooms, turning her words into lessons on empathy. Nurses, social workers, and charity leaders praised the depth of her understanding, noting how donations surged almost overnight thanks to her heartfelt appeal. A video taken from the front row showed a woman weeping quietly as Charlotte spoke about the forgotten and unseen. Later, Kensington Palace released the woman's letter, a moving testament to the princess's reach. Even inside the palace, the moment demanded care. William and Catherine, aware of their daughter's newfound influence, chose restraint, allowing the event to breathe. No press statements, no curated responses. Charlotte's voice had found the world on its own, and the world responded, not with shallow fascination, but with genuine admiration. Rumors and speculation swirled. Would she speak again soon? Did this signal a new era for the monarchy? Yet, through it all, one truth endured. Princess Charlotte had spoken because she believed in something greater, and in that choice, she had quietly, irrevocably captured hearts everywhere. But what happens when royal protocol meets bold tradition within the palace walls? Stay glued to your screen to find out. Royal protocol, tradition, and the ancient walls of the palace. Within the ancient walls of the palace, a quiet revolution was unfolding. Royals are expected to appear, smile, wave, and retreat. They are seen but rarely heard. Speeches, especially unscripted ones, are reserved for senior members and filtered through endless approvals. Yet at a gala tucked away in London, Princess Charlotte did something extraordinary. She spoke from the heart, instantly capturing the attention of millions. William and Catherine watched in silence, knowing true influence grows when the voice itself carries power. Charlotte's words didn't break protocol, but subtly reshaped it, hinting at a monarchy that could evolve without losing dignity. For a girl, barely 10, her balance of courage and respect was astonishing. Inside the palace, whispers circulated. Some celebrated this as a step toward a more inclusive royal tradition. Others feared it introduced unpredictability into a carefully ordered world. The corridors hummed with speculation. Was Charlotte ready for the spotlight? How had Queen Camilla reacted? Has a new standard been set by a child? The truth was simpler. The monarchy had always evolved, surviving wars, scandals, and social upheaval because someone dared to push boundaries while honoring tradition. Charlotte's speech wasn't rebellion, it was reform, embodying her parents' vision of a monarchy that listens rather than dictates. Advisors quietly drafted new guidelines, not to limit her, but to protect her. They debated the timing of future speeches, how much freedom to allow, and how to shield her from pressure. Charlotte had opened a door to the future, a version of royalty that uplifts the voiceless while preserving legacy. In the days that followed, letters poured into Kensington from teachers, charity workers, and children, all touched by a voice that made them feel seen. The echoes of that gala lingered far beyond palace walls, like a candle whose glow warms hearts long after it is lit. Charlotte hadn't just spoken, she had quietly reshaped the story of what a modern princess can be. But what made this young princess's bold legacy unforgettable? And how did she change everything? Stay glued to your screen. The bold legacy of a young princess. Not all light comes from chandeliers, and not all courage is announced with fanfare. At a royal gala, tucked away in London, Princess Charlotte quietly stepped forward and spoke. Her words were not rehearsed, nor were they grandiose, but they landed like soft thunder, reaching beyond the gilded walls and into the hearts of people who had never met her. In the days that followed, letters and drawings poured into Kensington Palace, from teachers, charity workers, and children alike, thanking a young girl for making them feel seen. Life inside the palace carried on, but Charlotte had changed. Walks in the garden with her brothers, lessons with tutors, and bedtime readings with her mother now had a subtle rhythm of purpose. Catherine noticed the shift immediately. The way Charlotte asked deeper questions, the thoughtful pauses before she spoke, the quiet energy she carried. William, too, reminded her gently one evening that true leadership was not performance, but a calling. Charlotte nodded, understanding far more than she revealed. Even as the press moved on to the next headline, the public never forgot. Invitations followed. Youth forums, charity events, art exhibitions, all spaces where she could step forward of her own choosing. Her presence was not about obligation, it was about conviction. Among older royals, her speech sparked quiet reflection. Some saw it as a gentle push toward modern relevance, others as a reminder to maintain dignity without losing connection. Yet none could deny the effect. A child had spoken with sincerity, and the room had listened. Years later, that night would be referenced in books, documentaries, and classrooms, not as a polished royal moment, but as the night courage and compassion outweighed gold. Charlotte never sought to be a voice for her generation. She simply followed the tug of her heart. And in doing so, she revealed a truth older than any throne. Real power lies not in ruling, but in reaching, not in commanding silence, but in offering empathy. The gala ended, but her words continue to ripple through time, reminding the world that bravery wrapped in kindness can awaken even the oldest institutions, and perhaps shape a brighter, more thoughtful future for the crown. But what do you think drove Princess Charlotte to take the mic and stun everyone at the royal gala? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.